I'm bringing the energy today. I'm full of energy.
Welcome to the Price Writers podcast with Jeremy Keating and me, Catrin Townsend. Join us as we explore and discuss the world of insurance related books, offering our insights, recommendations, and crucially, how to apply it to insurance pricing roles. Today, we are hitting a big topic widely debated by both insurance professionals and 4-year-olds. What is fair? And how can we make the world, and especially the world of work, more fair? The book we read was Seeking Fairness at Work by Hannah Hassel-Kelchner. We were first made aware of this book at the Axiom Book Awards, which are run by the Jenkins Publishing Group. This book won the 2025 Axiom Business Book Gold Medal Award, and Price Writer the book also won an award at Axiom, joining previous winners including Nobel laureate Robert Shiller, former US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, Pulitzer Prize winner Doris Kearns Goodwin, and philanthropist and investor Ray Dalio. So, Jeremy, you joined that illustrious crew. How do you feel?
Pretty amazing, actually. So it's really surprising to me that a book on, it's a niche subject, insurance pricing, but it's been recognised with the very serious book awards. It's just really amazing to me that people feel that the book I wrote, the words I put on the page, are actually worthy to be up there with so many great writers and famous people. So it is this one on the wall here. It's a massive plaque that you actually get for it. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a big thing to have achieved. And it's good for me, but it's also good for all of us in insurance pricing that our profession's being recognised.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But back to Seeking Fairness at Work, can you give us the TLDR?
Seeing Fairness at Work is a book that's about how do we make our workplaces fairer, not just for specific people, but for everyone. So employees, employers, like all your different backgrounds and everything. And it's very much fairness starts with belonging. You can't really feel that your organization is fair unless you feel you belong to it. And belonging is an important feeling. It's about trust. It's actually about developing bonds at work, knowing that your employer will treat you well. Actually, when you've got reasonable expectations, both from employers and employees, so people know what's expected of them, and trust is going to be a big one. So we're probably going to mention it several times because actually having trust in your workplace is important. Realistic goals as well, and being listened to. So, and that works both ways as a manager or an employee or a leader, actually feeling that what you say matters to people and they take it in and listen to you, but taking on board all points of view, not just hearing kind of a command and control or people grumbling, but actually listening to each other.
Let's dig into these a bit more, and especially how we can put this into action. Because I think we all like to think that we are all being fair, especially in professional settings. I love the one that you said about fairness is about belonging. So let's
Mhm.
start with that.
Yeah. How do you actually make people feel like they are part of a team and an organization? Before you can feel that your organization is actually fair to people, you actually have to feel like you belong to that organization. And that's about fairness. It's about knowing that you're going to be treated well by that organization and you then feel loyal to it and you feel that reciprocated loyalty. Now, I have personal experiences of working for a large organization and feeling I was very loyal to it, but not necessarily seeing it be loyal to other people. So I think that's one too that we perhaps all can relate to if we worked in a few large organizations, how you work some places and you feel there is a team and people belong to that business. And you work other places and you feel it's very transactional and you don't feel like you belong. And actually, if you don't feel like you belong, you can't then feel like decisions are made fairly in the organization. So, how do we actually go about belonging? An organization needs to have rules and values, and you need to stick to them. They can't just be lists of things on the walls or stuff that people write in the HR book. They actually have to be real things. And I think we're all going to relate to having worked somewhere that's got a long list of words that are the values. I mean, I can remember working somewhere where that one of the values was to uphold the values, but those were a list of five other values. So all in all, we had kind of 13-ish values, and they were teamwork, loyalty. I think fairness was actually one of them, but they were just things on the wall, weren't they? Let's be honest. And they're numbers you get given at the end of the year in your appraisal, but do you really feel it? Um, so I'll give a really good example, and this is in the book, where people have been given something and then it's been reneged on later. So this particular one was working from home agreements. So particularly taking people on and giving them contracts where they could work from home, either fully remote or partially remote and so on. And then chipping away at that and then ending it. And there is no quicker way to make someone feel like you are not trustable as an organization, like they do not belong to somewhere that's just going to change the rules on them. And yes, I can understand how decisions made in the past might not align to how the organization feels now. But if you're not going to be loyal to people, they will not be loyal to you. So, and it ends up in a downward spiral. So we often hear about things like this quiet quitting culture. People are going to quiet quit if you tell them they have to come into the office 5 days a week when you took them on a contract that said they didn't have to. They're just not, you're never going to get that motivation back from people. Another one they talk about a lot in the book is actually recognizing the value of work. And this means genuinely recognizing it, not just firing out an email that says, everyone did very well, thank you very much. Or at the end of the project saying, the project was successful. And often it's very strange with these. Having worked in a big organization, it will be on someone's list somewhere to send out the congratulations everyone email. So if a project goes really well, you get sent the congratulations email. If a project delivers 3 months late and over budget, you get sent the congratulations email. It's the same one they send out all the time. And it's like, it's dissonant. And in that way, you can't then develop belonging and you can't trust the organization.
Is there something there though that you want to appreciate people's work? Projects do get delayed 3 months or whatever. You still obviously want to appreciate that people probably did work as hard as they could. There were different other constraints that changed that timeline. So how do you think that can be done better?
Yeah, not just sending out the generic, we achieved the project email. So it's not actually about the work that anyone did. It's the somebody ticked the box to say that they did that piece of work thing. And you can't belong, you can't trust an organization that's like that. I can remember a particular case where we've had asked if we could have people's like achievements recognized by a director who would send an email to them to say, well done. And it was agreed that we would have this. So very kind finance director would send people emails, particularly for exam passes, and they would say, well done. I wanted to personally congratulate you on achieving this exam success. But all of them said they were sent by his PA. Because on Outlook it says send by, and they're all sent by his PA. So it wasn't personal.
That's what I'm here for. I think appreciation at work is really difficult to get right, actually, because what works for some people doesn't work for other people. And I know that I've got it
Mm.
wrong before with one group of people. We started trying to use the team stickers to appreciate people if they'd finished a bit of work, just in the wider pricing team. We just do a little team sticker thing. And I thought it was going really well. I really liked them. A few other people said they really liked them. The other half of the team said they were really patronizing and they hated them. And also, why are all the stickers like animals? Obviously, I don't control that. But it's really interesting that different people react differently to different types of appreciation. So it is definitely one of those things where, as a team, you have to be constantly working out what people like. Like some people love to be called out, in a big team day or something.
Mm.
Some people are going to hate, like genuinely really feel uncomfortable walking onto a stage and like 200 people clapping. It's a very difficult one to get right, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that comes up in the book, actually, not just having a generic thing about these. And that's really what I'm talking about. In a big organization, if you are just completely generic about things, you will never develop a sense of loyalty in people.
And don't just thank your project team as well. Even if you've got 5 people in your team doing a modeling project, you probably have 2 others who are keeping the BAU running, keeping the rest of the business needs going. And if you just take out the project team, do a celebratory lunch or whatever it is, the people who weren't on that project doing very valuable work can sometimes almost feel like anti-appreciation, if that makes sense, you know? So we've got to get that balance. It's tricky.
Oh, definitely. Especially if you do public announcements, think very hard about what you're saying. So if you say things like XYZ has finally been delivered, like just that one word can really be negative to what you meant. This is a genuine example. I can remember someone actually putting that, and it was meant to be a nice announcement, but actually was taken to suggest that it had run late, which is not what they meant at all. So yeah, just be careful with wording.
Yeah. Here in the UK, even if someone puts regards or kind regards, that is automatically, you think, my goodness, what's I do wrong? We all know, you got to be very careful with your words, I guess. Yeah, you talked about trust a bit. We've talked about trust previously on this podcast when we did Patrick Lencioni's The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. He says that trust is the foundation of a high performing team. So, what are some examples of things that leaders are doing that inadvertently erode trust?
I can remember working somewhere where the goals were unrealistic. So it's a private equity firm, and the sales goals for the year that would trigger people receiving bonuses were unrealistically high, and they weren't the ones we really thought we would achieve. And I know that because I was part of setting the plan and was told to set it like that. So if you do that and people know, say you can't ever expect in that organization that people will receive a bonus. And in fact, I know full well people didn't because the plan was unrealistic. So if you live in a world like that, an organization like that, you are not going to trust the management or the owners or even other people that you work with. Another one is actually poor conflict management. So where people behave in bad ways. I can remember this is going back a long way, and this was still at the time more acceptable at work. But I worked with someone who would regularly drink very heavily at lunch. But even back then, it was not an acceptable way to behave. And this person would then be quite aggressive and hard to work with in the afternoons because they were quite essential to the running of the organization. It was treated like it wasn't really going on. But the message back from the manager was, "Oh, well, they don't really drink very much, do they? Or it's only a couple of times a month," and things like that. So it's like they set a rule, but because it was this person, they broke the rule. And then it was sort of gaslighting us and saying that we were complaining about nothing when it was really obviously in our face that we weren't. It's just not an environment that you can be comfortable with. You can't seek fairness in an environment where you can't trust people to behave. So I think a phrase that they very much criticize in the book is talking about low employee engagement because it makes it sound like the employees are the problem. Like you are not engaging. So we asked you, and often we survey people, we say to them, how engaged are you? Low, medium, high. A lot of people tick low. And then we go, oh, we've got a problem with low employee engagement. Like, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do to the employees to make them engaged? And it doesn't really work. Reading that in the book and saying that's really common in big organizations just really chimed with me. I can remember feeling exactly like that.
A lot of companies have issues where their employee engagement survey scores quite highly for the managers, but a lot less highly for heads of department directors and senior leaders. What do you think can be done in those kind of situations? What do you think the senior leaders are not doing?
Yeah, it's interesting because we use the word engagement and then we don't engage with people, but it's there for us. So I often think of leaders who had even the simple thing of being like, I've got a new person coming. They work two levels below me, but I'm going to spend 20 minutes with them. And then that person has met you. You aren't this like person who works a few rows away or this person who gives talks and speeches and sets the thing. And I must behave if I'm near them and I must be careful what I say because like that's going to affect what they think of me and so on. If you just take the time to engage with that person, actually have a good conversation, find out a bit about them, and also be open, listen. Don't go and tell, go and listen. And that just has straight away an effect on people that they are engaged with you as a person. So then later in the year, when they're asked, how do you engage with this person, they actually feel that they have. So if you've never engaged with a person, it's very hard for them to score you anything but low or medium.
And so much of senior leader engagement is often at the very extremes of emotion. So it's either very, very positive, yay, we've hit our overall pricing team goal or something, pops into your team meeting to say well done, or sends those emails as you're saying. Or it's at the very other end where a senior manager has been asked to get involved in a project because it's not going quite so well. So I think it becomes quite difficult if the only time that people are engaging with senior leaders is in a real roller coaster of feelings for them to get kind of a genuine read on people. It feels
Mhm.
like a punishment to engage with senior leadership then. I think that's something pricing leaders can watch out for. And if you are in that kind of situation, I would say try and just pick 1 or 2 projects. You probably can't pick more than that because of time, but only try and pick 1 or 2 projects that you wanna take an active involvement in from the beginning. Don't wait until things are going badly to jump in because then it seems like your presence then is a lot more negative.
Another one that's explained is that you can't outsource engagement to HR. Employee engagement is not a HR problem. If you've got low employee engagement, their day to day in your team, in your organization, it's not for HR to fix that. Yes, they can be part of the solution, but actually, you need to work on that in your team and in your department. The book talks about how we come across as people as well, and to really think about how you feel inside and then how you appear externally. And that, to be honest, a lot of the time, if you are going to do your job well, you can't always allow those things to line up. And I know that seems difficult for people and potentially causes cognitive dissonance, but actually, if you've had a bad morning, you ran late, you dropped something, you broke it, your car was a problem, I don't know, whatever it is, and you arrive flustered, unhappy at work, and then you take that attitude at work, you will not do well. So I thought that was quite interesting, actually having to get a good understanding of yourself and your emotions before you start interacting with people at work. I thought was pretty effective advice, actually. It's talked about in the book is that actually your feelings are infectious. So how you feel does come across to people, even when we try and be guarded about it or careful about it. But particularly if you're just out there with your feelings and your emotions, other people will be like that. We've probably all had a time where someone's come into work in a bad mood, and by halfway through the afternoon, everyone's in a bad mood because their feelings come across. And the same, the reverse, people are pleasant to work with, and then everyone feels pleasant in the opposite. I've worked some really lovely places where people have had a really lovely attitude. Feelings are infectious. If you just get involved in things when they are being troublesome, then that is a feeling that will actually get connected to you as a person. And if that's their only interaction for you for a month, that is what they will think of you.
Yeah, you always see that, don't you? At a team away day or there's like a meeting on a Monday morning and everyone comes in a bit low energy and you just need one person to really bring the energy.
Mhm.
And I know it's really hard sometimes as a pricing team, might not be feeling super extroverted, but it's really interesting that with just one person really trying to bring it, the whole mood of the room shifts over the course of the hour or something. I think that's really powerful. And no matter what level you are, know that you have that power.
The book talks about how people's memories are composed of feelings. And if we think about this, it's actually true. If you think about the times you've been very happy at work, there you go. It's feelings. And the things that stick with us are because we had strong emotions during them. That could be negative or positive. If we think back to, say, a holiday we've been on, and you do these things at the time, and often you think to yourself, "Oh, I'll definitely remember this bit," and that's not the bit that you remember. You remember something else, like it might be going for a walk, but it really sticks with you because of how you felt. And it's interesting because it's the same in the office environment. If you think to yourself memories of times at work, they will often be the highs and the lows that stick with you, and that's important to realize. Something else that the book talks about is not getting stuck in broadcast mode, and I've done this before. So you are just like blah, blah, blah to everyone the whole day, particularly times where you're presenting and things like that, you can get really into then being the center of attention and then you fail to listen. And I think that's very hard as a senior person because often people are looking to you for guidance and information all of the time. It's very hard to then put the clutch down, change gear into listening mode once you're used to broadcasting a lot.
One thing I guess that could really help with that is color coding your calendar.
Mm.
I think we mentioned this for previous other reasons. I love color coding. I'm really visual, but even if you just color coded it, like, this is me presenting. I do this with my work calendar now. I have one color for presenting mode and then other colors for more listening or dialogue type meetings. Something like that would be a really good prompt for anyone who has a kind of a mixture of energies they need to bring.
I think so. I think that's a good way actually of knowing what energy you're going to bring to a meeting because sometimes it is going to be a meeting where you should do more listening. I remember actually sitting down with someone who was a new employee to me for their first one-to-one. And at the end of it, they said, "Oh, you're really different to my previous boss." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, and he was like, "Yeah, because this person always just comes and spends half an hour telling me everything that's going on in the team. Whereas you spent half an hour asking me about what I was doing and my things and how I'm getting on with the role." And to be honest, they never said which one they preferred. But I would like to think that my style was better. Although who knows, because maybe somewhere in between's actually probably the right place to be.
Mhm. So your final point you said was that fairness is all about listening to different points of view. I'm sure most people will be aware of echo chambers on social
Mm.
media or the internet, even in newspapers. But what does this book say about really listening to diverse and sometimes difficult viewpoints?
I say this a lot. Listen is such a skill. You just cannot make people feel more like they belong to an organization than listening to them. And we hear people say listen or listens might be of value for an organization all the time. That actually listen. A really good tip, which comes up in the book, but I've read it other places as well. Do not spend the time in which someone is talking thinking about what you are going to say when they finish. Okay. Your brain works a lot faster than they talk. You will have time at the end to think of what you're going to say. Okay. You can take a breath. You can indicate that you're about to say something in some way, but take the time then to think what you're going to say, not while they're talking.
I once completed a LinkedIn course about using improv techniques in the workplace. Having to complete this kind of tick box, totally unrelated CPD was one of the reasons that I joined prize writers. It was such a weird thing to have to do. But anyway, the only thing that I took from this course was the phrase yes and. So they use this all the time in improv. And the idea is that no matter how crazy someone's suggestion in improv, you have to say yes. And so whether they say they're running an ice cream shop for armadillos or whatever it is, just got to go with it and you got to build on it. They say that it's much different to hearing yes, but. Yes, but indicates I'm going to disagree with you. And my yes is like, I'm going to still ignore everything you just said. Is saying yes. And it has a real different vibe to it. And it gives people the feeling that not only did you listen and you're acknowledging them, but you're also going to build on their idea rather than dismiss it. But what I actually quite like is that it acknowledges people without actually agreeing with them. You're not saying, I wholeheartedly endorse your view. So it forces you to build on their point instead of just moving on. And so you do have to listen a bit harder to someone to actually understand what their point is for you to be able to build on it.
That's right. I think a really good listening technique is actually if your mind is wandering whilst people are talking, which is going to happen, think to yourself, what would be a very brief summary of what they're saying? And that's a good way to keep yourself focused, particularly if someone's talking at great length. And then if you want to, you can say it. So you can say, yes. And if I've heard you correctly, and then a couple of words that just summarize what they've said, that is like an 11 out of 10 communicate to someone that you've actually listened to them. People love that. It comes up in the book not to use the compliment sandwich, which was a real jaw drop for me because for about 20 years in my career, people have been saying use the compliment sandwich. So if you were about to tell someone a negative, tell them a compliment, the bad thing, and then the compliment. The problem is that it does not actually result in people hearing the criticism, or at least not in a way that's going to lead them to changing their behavior. And in fact, just the act of using it makes us diminish the thing that we want them to improve.
Do you think that's true? I've always found the opposite. I always find that people, or some people, tend to totally disregard the positive things, which I said in double the quantity of the negative things. So do you think that's a personality thing?
I think that's a totally valid point as well, where people will focus in on the criticism and not appreciate the compliment. So, yeah, I think it works in both ways. But either way, the criticism is not the point. The actions that you need them to do instead is the point. Communicate the negatives, sure, and do communicate them. You don't have to put them inside a sandwich, but give people actual actions to improve them, and that does give you work. That as a manager, one of the things you are there for is to make your staff improve. Because if they improve, then you are doing a good job. So actually thinking to yourself, what can I give this person that will help them improve in their work? And then talk to them about it and give them that. And here's the hard bit, track it. So don't just make it a throwaway thing and then you maybe come back to it at the end of the year or whatever. Actually, track it later and then talk to them again about it and say, did it improve? And if it's something that you're not going to track, then maybe it's not that important.
I know everyone uses SMART goals, right, for their main performance targets or whatever. But even just for your personal development plans, making those goals smart. For example, it might be you've got a newish person and they just need to learn about the business, right? That's basically what needs to happen. But if you say, right, your goal is to learn about the business, then what are they supposed to do? Like, what will
Yeah.
they go away and do? It's much more helpful to say, right, so we want you to learn about the business and understand what's going on. So I want you to attend this many portfolio meetings. Or, for example, I've had this with processes before where I've said, right, I want you to get really comfortable with a certain process. That in itself is not very measurable. But what I can say instead is say, be able to do this kind of change independently without errors, feeling confident about it. And in your second half of the year, your goal is to make an improvement on that part of the process because there's no better way of showing you understand something than trying to improve it slightly. So, whatever it is, even if you think it's quite a, I'm going to say soft or quite intangible thing, just like learning more about, there are ways you can make it really objective. And sometimes that's not through an outcome. Sometimes it's through you need to have attended these meetings, make it process driven, and the process can be the target.
I think that's really true. And years ago, being a graduate, I think it would have been fantastic to have someone like you that actually takes the time and would set height for that. I can remember working somewhere where one of the values was strategic vision. And there was some blather about how it's about understanding the market that we operate in and the things wider from your own personal role and blah, blah, blah. And asking, how do I achieve that one? And not being given a concrete answer to it. So I think actually setting smart targets, even around the things like that, is really important.
Mhm. Yeah, and like I say, it can be process oriented. It can be attend a certain number of meetings or attend this kind of meeting. I really like ones where you demonstrate that you're an expert because people ask you questions. So if you want to become an expert in deployment, then the way you can demonstrate that to me is that someone or an external stakeholder to this team has come to you with questions instead of coming to me as your manager and then back down to you,
Yeah.
for example. So you can, as a manager, get really creative with exactly what your targets are going to be. It doesn't have to be just complete this process or whatever. But it's really important, like you say, to go back to it regularly. And I know a lot of people do this kind of thing half yearly or quarterly because that's what HR says. But realistically, if you make those process oriented targets, then actually you're going to want to keep coming back to them even monthly to check that people have got those opportunities. It sounds like there's some really good stuff in this book. Do you recommend that our listeners do the full read?
I would tentatively say for some people it's worthwhile reading this one. I see why it won an award. It's very good. It's jam-packed with a lot of useful information. It is dense and quite listy though, so that's the bit where I would pull back because it's actually not terribly long, but there's a lot in there, so it's quite hard to digest. I've mentioned it before, but I quite like books that have stories that bring the advice to life, and it does not include much of that. It's mostly a do this, try this is what works book. So, yes, I would say if you're okay reading books like that, it will be great. If you maybe read 1 or 2 books like this a year, I would definitely stick with something that's more in the style of Rebel Ideas, where there's a lot of stories that bring it to life.
I really like the tick lists. I think that's great. I like it being actionable. I like it being quite snappy. Actually, we talked a lot in the Patrick Lencioni book. The bit I didn't like was the narrative. So this might appeal to a different kind of person, maybe.
Yeah, I can definitely see how some people enjoy it. I mean, I was fine with it, but yeah, I'm just thinking people that don't necessarily read a lot of nonfiction, maybe not so much.
Next time, we are going to be talking about Aspiring Actuarial Leaders, the Modern Manager's Toolkit by the amazing Julia Lessing. We've had her on our podcast before, and she's hosted some really, really engaging price writers masterclasses in the past few months. This book is all about high performing actuarial team members who are transitioning from technical roles to managerial positions, or for those who want to be taking that next step in their career. It's a really good book. I can't wait to tell you all about it. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Price Writers transforms pricing professionals into the most respected leaders in insurance. Find out more about our engaging training, graduate schemes, and workshops by visiting pricewriters.com.